Hello. I am creating this series of articles and videos in order to address prejudices and condemnation I have seen both on the internet and in real life with regards to my target and perhaps my favorite species, the carp. In this instance, when I say carp, I refer to the common carp, Cyprinus carpio, and its genetic variants, mirror carp and leather carp, and to the koi carp, Cyprinus rubrofuscus. I feel this is something I have to do. How would you feel if someone made this comment about rainbow trout or largemouth bass? I have made it a concentrated effort in my brand to refrain from comment on hot-button topics, primarily politics. However, in this series, I will be required to address these issues directly as they pertain to the stigma and status of the common and koi carp in the United States of America. These will include 1. The status of the fish with regards to state agencies. 2. Their public appreciation, or lack thereof. 3. The reception of other non-native species. 4. The ethics, policies, and effects of bow fishing. For certain, these can be hot-button topics. However, if we wish to address these things in a meaningful way, and come to a truly intellectually honest conclusion of the issues at hand, they must be tackled. First, I suppose I should introduce myself formally, so that my position on the issue of carp and carp fishing is more fully understood. My name is Robert Troy Hampton Peterson, and I run this media outlet, such as it is, Carp Country Northwest. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, being born in Kirkland, Washington, and raised in Moses Lake, Washington. I have fished and been fascinated by animals, along with the weird, the bizarre, and the macabre, from a very young age, and often have been drawn to animals which others frequently demonize and condemn. These include spiders, bats, snakes, insects, snails, worms, and yes, carp. I graduated from Moses Lake High School in 2006. I completed my associate's degree from Big Bend Community College in 2012 and my bachelor's of science from Central Washington University with a focus on ecology and evolutionary biology in 2016. During my undergraduate career, I began work on a thesis which would transfer over to my graduate career, which as of this writing is still ongoing. My specialty was herpetology, the study of reptiles and amphibians, and had been a personal dream since childhood. My thesis involves the ecology and life history of a non-native whiptail lizard, the Colorado checkered whiptail, Aspidostis neotessellata, in the disturbed shrub steppe of Grant County, Washington. As my study species is non-native, most of my education and research has been spent in and around the topic of non-native and, in some cases, invasive organisms in novel environments. I will address how I came into carp fishing in a later post, so for now, let us move on to more relevant matters. As you are no doubt aware, the world is changing rather rapidly, and this is a cause for great concern to those in the fields of science, as well as those who place value in the natural world. That the world is changing, with the climate changing due to the compiled effects of what has been termed the Anthropocene, which is to say, a geologic epoch defined by the effects of man, is widely accepted by pertinent authorities. These effects are accepted as demonstrably true by all credible and reputable authorities on the relevant topics. Most often reported in the mainstream news sources are plastic pollution in the oceans, and the rise of greenhouse gases, notably CO2, in the atmosphere. However, These include changes which would not be argued even by the staunchest climate change denier, namely the fragmentation of habitat by human activity and intense pressure on game animals and fisheries by commercial and recreational ventures. There are, without a doubt, animals which are going to suffer for this and which, if we are not careful, and the animals unlucky, will travel the well-trod trail to oblivion. These are often specialists, species which have evolved to survive in a single niche, often relying on one very specific food source, and generally have a long lifespan and a low rate of reproduction. However, there are organisms that will thrive in their absence. Before we begin to really understand carp and the sport that they so stoically carry, we must understand what the kind of animal they are. Most of you, I'm sure, are aware of weeds. Yes, weeds, those pesky plants that, no matter how much you till, pull, poison, and destroy, always seem to make their way back into your garden the minute you let your guard down. If anything most aptly represents the definition of tenacity, it is weeds. Any gardener you talk to will have horror stories and hatred of these nasty, garden-clogging species. In biology, a weed species has a broader meaning that includes flora but also goes beyond, into fauna and even into microbiology. These are species which fall on the polar opposite end of the spectrum from the animals so doomed by human activity. In point of fact, these species seem to thrive on it. Weed species are often the first to colonize a newly developed, or perhaps a newly vacated, environment which other, more specialized species are poorly adapted to survive in. It is this ability which also makes them extremely tolerant of habitats which are dominated and shaped by humans. Weed organisms often have common traits which are observed within a species. These include: they reproduce quickly and/or in large numbers. They are capable of dispersing offspring over a wide geographical range. They have a plastic physiology, allowing for the organism to survive in a wide variety of habitats and habitat conditions. They often establish populations in strange places, and they often resist efforts at eradication once they have become established. Now we come to the ultimate question. Why is this series necessary? Surely the science is settled, and surely the only question now is how to remove an unwanted trash fish from our waters. Well, not quite. The science in some cases is surely settled, particularly when it comes to the more notorious species, namely the infamous Asian carp and the lesser-known bighead carp. However, science is, in principle and practice, purely provisional. This means that there is no ultimate truth to which we arrive. We've only the current, most agreed upon ideas which best represent our world. Some of these, such as gravity, evolution, and germ theory, are so well tested that they become theories and are, in the real world, generally accepted as fact. Those which are not so well demonstrated are known as hypotheses. Biology can be a murky subject, and as life is often unpredictable, it changes often. Like most human endeavors, even the best of the best can be influenced by their personal beliefs. Non-native species are such a case. The most high-profile cases are usually negative. However, there are positive examples, as well as benign examples. The public, who generally are all too willing to grab on to the closest scapegoat, are all too happy to go with the authorities when it suits them, and blame something simple when the causes for their own personal concerns are far grander and multifaceted. So why is a series necessary? Carp angling, both in the traditional European style and on the fly, is becoming more accepted in North America and, as it pertains to us, in the United States. Social media platforms give a voice to those that have a passion for a fish that, like so many scapegoats, fights an uphill battle for public acceptance. Untold numbers of carp are either shot with bows or caught and left to die on the bank. This is not only a cruel practice which asphyxiates an animal if it doesn't otherwise die of severe trauma, but it prevents those who would ethically and enthusiastically angle for and appreciate these animals from encountering and appreciating these trophy fish in all their glory. There are better, more well-known and organized and funded outlets which promote the species and the sport. A relatively unknown persona, such as myself, may not be the best outlet for which to, on a national scale, change the image and erase the stigma, but it is up to all of those who love a thing to save a thing. As Dr. Seuss once wisely philosophized, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. As we continue on our journey of discovery towards an understanding and appreciation of the carp and carp angling, we will come to understand how carp are biological weed species, how the detrimental effects of bighead carp and Asian carp are distinct from that of common, grass, and koi carp, and should be treated as such, how prejudice against carp influences the relationship not only between humans and carp and other rough fish species, but between humans and the world, and how we have more in common with the carp than most people would like to admit.